All right, so welcome to another episode of the Life Adventurous podcast. I'm Jeni, your host, and this is the podcast that you want to listen to if you really want to expand the way that you think, dream bigger, have more adventures, live your best life, find your true authentic self, and of course, explore different avenues and ways of spirituality and growing that way. And as you guys have been along on this journey, we've explored a lot of great things as I've been sharing my journey about coming into myself, my authentic self. And I've been sharing a lot about the Akashic Records. And I like the idea of bringing on really special guests for you, special guests that really um, I'm like so excited for today. You guys don't even know. Like I was up all night, not really, but like I was like I feel like my brain was thinking all night in excitement. Like I'm so excited for this and I've been telling people about it, been totally hyping up this episode. Like you guys, I'm having this awesome person on today. It's going to be amazing. So, let me just get into it because you're like, okay, just deliver the goods. So today, the guest I'm bringing on, her name is Joanna Naughton, and I love her vibe and I love her energy because I feel like what she does for me is she helps me to expand my thinking to believe in what feels like or may seem like the impossible. To help me really, as I've been on my journey into learning about going from 3D into 5D and raising my vibration and energy and really trusting in myself a lot more. I feel like Joanna does a lot of this just naturally. It's like who she is and what she does and what she brings to the table. And, it's like every post she makes on Facebook is like activating in some kind of way, and there's always some kind of magic there. And so, really, today you guys are going to get to meet her and hear a little bit about. We're going to talk about some topics that maybe you've heard about, maybe you haven't heard about. So, you know, if this is new to you and you're like, what the hell, I encourage you just to like buckle up and come along for the ride because we're going to talk a little bit about collapsing timelines and timeline jumping and really time and how time is kind of irrelevant and it's just a figment of this matrix and this 3D reality that we're living in. Yet at the same time, there's a lot of things that don't exist, yet we think they exist. Like it's just this interesting dichotomy. So I'm going to bring on Joanna onto the screen. And for you guys listening, I'm actually putting this episode on YouTube. So you can always come watch on YouTube as well. So welcome, Joanna. Hi.
Hello.
Okay, so the typical podcast question is like, okay, well, tell us who you are. Explain who you are. Who are you and what do you do?
Just, start with the easy question. Start with who are you? Who am I? Let's start with that question.
Just tell me in 3 words.
Before I do, your intro for me was just the most joyful, magical thing. Like I'm actually now thinking of just like seeing if we can come to some sort of arrangement where I hire you to just walk alongside me, like just in life, to be my introducer. Just you can literally just.
And it'll change every time because I'm going to be like, and Joanna is this amazing person who, works with the magic of dragons. And, like every time it'll be something different, even more magical.
I love it, seriously. Like all at the same time, I'm like, oh my gosh, like almost in tears, like, oh, this is so beautiful. And also like, shit, the pressure's on now. Like I'm here and let's go.
Girl, you don't even pressures. I don't even feel like, I mean, you may feel pressure. This is my perspective. You may feel pressure, but like not right now, but like in life as a human. But like, I don't even think pressure exists in your world because you completely transmute it within seconds. Like, okay, pressure be gone.
Exactly that. See, once again, you know exactly what's going on. You know that that's the case, right? You know that even just me bringing the idea of pressure is just a funny little teeny weeny part of the mind that loves to say those things that instantly, actually, through noticing it, it just transmutes, off it goes. Such a beautiful thing. So yeah, that question of who am I, who am I, who am I, who am I? Two of the words you said actually in describing me, really start to just to lean into that beautifully. And you said about the posts that I share are activating in and of themselves and magical. And that really is a huge part of my energy and who I be, not just in my work. For me, this is so much more than just having a business, being an entrepreneur, anything like that. It is my absolute kind of mission and joy of me being me in life, in work, in all of it, and the impact that I create for myself, and also then ripple effects to for other people. It really is about activating, and magic is a big part of that. And so activating specifically what I know to be true in this lifetime is that I am here in this lifetime as what I refer to as a throat activator. So anyone who's familiar with the energy centers, the chakras, which is a lot of, I use the energy centers and their beautiful kind of wisdom to be able to hang things off. And it really is just a kind of model to be able to hang things off, but a super powerful, useful one. I use that a lot in my work. And so the throat energy center is all about expression. It's all about communication. It's all about openness, of sharing your truth, sharing your message. And I know that in many, many past lifetimes, and we've got straight into the woo of past lifetimes, right? In many, many past lifetimes, I have been what I would more refer to as a heart activator. So using my heart energy and therefore my arms, all the way down my arms and into my hands, of being able to use my hands to heal, to activate, things like that we'd call now, Reiki, the kind of real heart healing stuff. In this lifetime, though, that energy is expanded really up into my throat. And so simply by me using the power of my voice, yes, and even to the point of the tonality of my voice, the speed of it, the volume of it, all of that around, I activate light codes, I activate energy within people to be able to reconnect and remember the truth of them. And also the beautiful thing is about that throat energy, yes, it's about the voice, but it also can be, it's about expression generally. And so through writing, through sometimes literally just through being and through the breath, through being with someone in the presence of the breath, of expressing that and then receiving in what comes, that really is who I be, is someone who, for myself, always first, because we have to always go self first. I activate and reconnect with the energy of alignment within me, that life force energy of alignment, and therefore then I do the same thing and support other people side by side, in no hierarchy, and no me, yes, leading, but leading from that middle side by side energy. I do that with other people, and it's such a gift to be able to do that. And of course, then within that, a hell of a lot of magic comes. A hell of a lot of magic happens. A hell of a lot of magic is created. A hell of a lot of magic is allowed. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I shared with you a bit about the Life of Interest podcast before we came on live, and it's so interesting. I didn't even realize this, but you're talking about the chakras, and as you refer to them commonly, the energy centers. And I actually, before I took my mini little break with the podcast, I had a whole chakra series where I had like 2 to 3 guests per chakra come on. And share a bit about what their chakras meant to them and their work. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm telling you guys, if you're watching or listening right now, you have to go listen to some of those episodes, but do not do it now. You have to stick around and continue to listen to this conversation before you go do that. That's not a prerequisite to this conversation, but I thought it was perfect how you mentioned that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. So you're sharing like how you activate. What I'd like to do is I'd like to talk a little bit about like the now, like what you're doing with clients with the activation and alignment. And then I would also like to then kind of giving you a heads up of what's coming, kind of back up into like, Joe as a little girl or teenager or whatever, and kind of like what led you into this? How did you come to this space?
Yeah. Okay. I love that. So what I'm doing with clients, as I say, always self first. And then with my clients now, here's a way that I have been kind of called to describe it, that just seems to be able to really resonate with people. If we imagine that we are all a unique musical note, right? We're all energy. We know we're all energy. We're all vibration. We're all frequency. And imagine we take on that a metaphor within that we are all a musical note. And when I say we are all a unique musical note, if you imagine that the truest, purest essence of us, our soul vibration, our soul frequency, the limitless, infinite part of self, is a specific musical note. And so imagine that soul self, right, in you, Jeni, is the musical note C, and is singing the tune of the musical note C. It's humming that note, it's singing that note. But of course, in each lifetime, and particularly in human incarnations, but because human incarnations really do bring us to a place of quite a lot of density and heaviness, of having real physical matter. And so actually, there are a lot more challenges in human incarnations often than incarnations we might have in other dimensions or in other, as in other star systems, in other kind of places and spaces. And therefore, in a human incarnation, we are going to have some other notes being played that maybe aren't truly in alignment with that musical note C. Through conditioning as we're growing up, the mind might be playing a lot of, the note G. It might just be playing G and thinking that that is the note it wants to play. And maybe then the body's sometimes playing the F and thinking that's it wants to play. And then it goes in and out of lots of different things, right? And maybe our mother or our father played particular musical notes. And so we're learning from them, we're playing those notes. And so, of course, if we are in our truest vibration, the musical note C, and yet we keep playing the musical note D, we keep going with habits and patterns and programs and beliefs that basically are not in alignment with our truest vibration, it's going to feel heavy and hard, and it's going to feel tight, literally tight on our skin, almost like, oh, why things just feel like they're a struggle, feel like they're a challenge. And it's because we're playing the musical note that isn't in alignment with the truest vibration of our soul. And that doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It's totally perfect that actually we go through what I refer to as the forgetting phase. We go through, we incarnate, we come into, as souls, we come into this lifetime, and then we go through this forgetting phase so that on the other side, our soul can deeply expand through the re-remembering, can deeply expand through the lessons. So it's actually perfect that this is happening. But of course, a lot of us reach this point where we're playing these musical notes that aren't us, and it's like, whoa, this just doesn't feel right anymore. Fundamentally, the work that I do with what I refer to as my alignment activations is I work with people, I support people to first remember their truest musical note, to be able to first deeply connect in with that soul vibration and frequency of their musical note, maybe singing that C, and they can start to really clearly reconnect and feel that musical note C. And when they then have truly remembered who they are, then they can start to, and we can start to together, teach that musical note to the mind and to the body. And literally the mind and body are kind of going, is it oh, no, not quite that. Is it, no, not quite that, right? And playing about to the point where when we can come to a place and space where the mind and body are singing from the same hymn sheet as the soul, where actually they're all singing in alignment with that soul vibrational note, and that any time that they play anything or we play any note that is out of alignment, we very clearly hear how clunky it sounds, right? And again, there's nothing wrong with it. It just gives us some beautiful learning and beautiful lesson to be able to then go, oh, okay, that didn't feel good. So what does feel good? And then expand more into that. When we're singing from the same hymn sheet, that is true, pure alignment. And the way that I do that, obviously mentioning there the chakras and the energy centers, is using often these chakras, the energy centers, to be able to kind of hang the model of description around. Fundamentally, everything is energy and everything is one energy. So even the idea of separating something out into different energies or different energy centers is really more of a human mind-made concept. But the mind needs to separate things out to be able to experience. That's why we're here. That is, for me, a beautiful model that allows the mind to be able to understand it and comprehend, the body to be able to experience it and allow it to fall in, and also absolutely is completely in alignment with the soul. And so that's how I'm kind of using the energy to activate that alignment and to come to that place where we're singing from the same hymn sheet. I mean, how beautiful is that?
Okay, so let me just tell you guys, and this is another thing I love about Jo. So I'm here, and I really wanted to bring Jo on here because I felt like she would be a perfect complement to this podcast and to your guys' experience, because she's such an activator, right? And I brought her on to help, I want to show her off to the world. Like, everybody, you need to know Jo. but it's interesting because I'm sitting here, right, as the podcast interviewer, whatever, in this label that I have, and I can feel I can feel like my energy being realigned right now just by sitting here, and you're not even like coaching me. It's actually quite interesting. And the reason I bring that up is because I know that I have so many chills. There are so many of you who are listening who may be feeling whatever it is in your own way. And like, speak about that a bit, Joe, where it's like, I love how you're just have a very specific way about taking on clients. You know, you're not just like taking them on to like make the money or whatever. You have a very different way of doing it. It's not like, speak a little bit into that, because I don't know, I've not felt this before. Just this is cool.
And this, right? I mean, first, this feeling that you experience. First, in order to experience that, you have to be tuned in to some degree, and all of us are tuned in. All of us have the ability to be tuned in, like a kind of radio turning on the radio. Even when the radio's turned off, we still know the radio is playing somewhere, right? It's still there. The radio frequencies and waves are there. It's just some people need to actually turn on the radio to even start to listen, and then others are at the phase of literally just tuning to try and find the exact right frequency, right? That sort of thing. And so because you already are so tuned into those frequencies, you can very easily feel the resonance, not simply of the messages and the words that I am saying, but of the vibrations and the energy behind it. And yes, the tonality of my voice and the way I use it and all of that, it's literally like I just get intuitively guided, like slow down, like become more monotone, rise and fall in it. It's like I'm just intuitively guiding the way I speak to people with that. And with you saying about feeling activated, those people who are already kind of tuned in, I do have some really close friends who literally cannot actually see me that often, because when I spend time with them, they leave like being with me in such this like energy. But then often what happens is they have to almost just know they've got a clear schedule for the next week after seeing me, because what will then happen is when we activate the energy of alignment, anything that is out of that frequency, that vibration. So when we get into that purest, musical note C, for example, of the soul, any musical notes D or E or G or F or whatever else actually feel so clunky. And those musical notes, then anything that's misalignment energy has to come up to the surface because it is ready to release. It cannot be within the same vibration of the alignment that's been activated and it's ready to release. And often that does then come up, that when misalignment comes to the surface, it's when stuff starts to happen that doesn't feel so good. It's when your car breaks down. It's when you feel a bit like, oh, I just feel really kind of, and kind of yucky and a bit meh and a bit whatever, and I can't be bothered. But that's coming up because those vibrations are not the truest essence of you. And so therefore they are ready to release. And so, I love that you said that you kind of say that and feel that energy. It is, therefore, when I say that, that means it is so, so important for me to only work with people who are absolutely ready for this work, to only work with people who it is divinely soul contracted for us to do this work at specific points. And so even though I have a lot of people reaching out to me, asking about the work I do and potentially wanting to work with me, and you kind of think about it in that way as a business owner, that I'd just be like, yeah, great. Anyone wants to give me some money, I'll take it. But that is not what this is about for me at all. As I say, even the idea of having a business, yeah, of course I have a business because it is the way right now to express who I be. But it's really not about that. And so it's like I intuitively just tune in. If someone reaches out potentially to work with me, I intuitively tune in, and I get shown generally very, very clearly whether we are meant to even step forward with a conversation about it at that point or not. And it's never anything to do with like that person, me thinking, oh, that, I'm not that fond of that person or anything like that. It really isn't. Or, oh, I don't think it's not coming from the mind. It really is this intuitive knowingness that someone is meant to work with me and when is the right time. And so some people I would just say, this just isn't, this isn't kind of meant for us, and maybe point them in a different direction. And then with some people, I'll just say, now's not our time. And when we absolutely know it is, we will come back together, we will return together. So the beauty of that is that the people that I work with, are truly, truly people where there is a full soul contract to do that work. And so therefore they are ready to be able to hold space for themselves. I am able to like fully hold space for them and connecting with their energy so easily. And so literally, I don't even need to often say anything. It really sometimes is just a breath or just the beingness or just me being fully grounded in my energy supports them to be grounded in theirs. And it means it's so magical. And it means we also don't have to work together for months and months and months and years and years and years. Some people we continue to choose to recontract to work together again and again and again. But a lot of people literally come into my like month-long alignment activation, and that is exactly what it's meant to be. And it is potent and powerful enough to be able to check in with them, or they check in with me months later and they're like, oh my God, Jo, I'm still feeling absolutely amazing. I'm still feeling totally aligned. I'm still feeling completely safe and grounded. And this magical thing's happened and I've called this thing in. And so I'm not someone who's just wanting to get people in who, are at any kind of phase or stage. It really is the perfect people for me, that kind of meant for people, for me and for them all around.
Yeah, I love that. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's interesting because even for myself, like you and I have talked, like we are going to work together at some point, right? And I mean, even just with this conversation, which was not the intention of the conversation, right? But I'm like, oh my God, I totally see it even clearer than what you had originally said. Because it's like I knew it, but I was like, oh, whatever. But now it's totally at a deeper level, which is really cool. And I think when I reached out to you and I was like, oh, should we work together? And you were like, well, I'd like you to do these things and sit with it you know, um, I needed that. Honestly, I needed
Right.
that kind of reflection. So I love that you do that with people, and it's not just about closing clients and whatever. So before we get to the juicy, I mean, we're already super juicy, but before we get into like timeline jumping and all of that, because I really want to spend some time there, just share a bit about kind of what's brought you to this point. Like I don't know, like what has your life been like? Have you always been this magical, or like what? Of course, everybody's magical, but like what has life been like for you up until now?
As you say, everybody is magical, right? Everybody is magical. But in terms of what I was saying earlier about this kind of tuning in and this forgetting
Mhm.
phase, I definitely had an extended forgetting phase. I, as a child, when I now tune back in from this perspective and look back to me being a child and tune back into that energy, I see and know and remember that I was really tuned into the magic there, that I was extremely imaginative. And as I will always say, imagination is the language of the soul. Like often the mind wants to say, no, I'm just making it up. That didn't really happen. That thing I saw or felt or noticed or tuned into, I must just be making it up. It must just be my imagination. Yeah, amazing. Because the imagination is the language of the soul. That's how we want it to flow through. Like that's how it's got to come. It's coming from somewhere, right? And so that imagination is how the soul speaks to us a lot of the time. So I was extremely imaginative. Um, I I definitely, when I kind of look back now, remember having moments where kind of really kind of weird things happened, and I suppose at the time it freaked me out that I tuned into a lot of non-physical stuff and was kind of connecting with a lot of non-physical stuff. And so it definitely kind of scared me almost into that forgetting phase, but that needed to happen. That was actually part of my soul contract for that to happen, so that eventually I'd be able to remember the child's, what happened there. But actually I needed that forgetting phase. And so then I kind of just went into a phase of, I ended up being a primary school teacher, because teaching really is the thing that is a massive part of my mission and of the work I do. It still is around teaching. A lot of the stuff I do is around teaching. Yes, a lot of the concepts and a lot of the kind of knowledge-based stuff, but so much more than that. It's now teaching the soul downloads and channeling the wisdom and kind of teaching from that aspect. But I clearly knew that teaching was a vibration that was important. It's just at that time, that was the direction I went into. And then very quickly ended up actually coaching, mentoring the teachers of the schools I was working with, and doing a lot of that stuff. And then the biggest thing I think that kind of nudged me, a big nudge, onto the path that I really now have leaned into is that just over 5 years ago, I banged my head and suffered a brain injury, basically. And so I banged my head really badly, had instant swelling on my brain, and it of course caused a lot of problems, particularly within mind, right? It literally knocked out of me a lot of memories, a lot of skills. I had to, at different points, I would go in and out of phases of having to literally reteach myself to speak, and to speak clearly and articulately, to be able to put the right words in the right places. I would often kind of lose, my eyesight would totally go like offline and go black and then kind of come back. And what I realized now was that literally was a full resetting of me. It was like in one moment of banging my head, and then obviously in each moment after that of the kind of recovery, if you like, that journey, it was like everything had to keep going offline so that it could kind of transmute itself into more what it was meant to be and more what served me, and then come back online. So my ability to speak would go offline and then it would come back online. My ability to see would go offline and then come back online. And so what was actually happening was not just a letting go, a death of my old identity and ego and the mind and kind of then even physical body stuff, but even almost like a full soul kind of walk out and step back in, almost like a full soul rebirth in a lot of ways. At that time, my soul kind of did a full kind of sit up and turn around to really fully activate into who I am now. And so it was from that the work I do now really was fully birthed. As I said, been teaching, coaching, mentoring for a long time, but now it had come to this place of me being able to basically build myself back up from the ground up. Again, using the energy centers, having to, after the brain injury, first go deeply into my root energy, grounding myself, absolutely remembering and noticing my safety, my own safety, my security, how I could stand on Mother Earth and feel safe and remember my own wholeness. And then obviously ultimately that energy came up into my sacral, where the desires and pleasure and passion came back in. That's when I started the business that I'm running now, because that desire and passion just came through for wanting to do this beautiful work. And then, you know, came up into the solar plexus of taking action around it, and suddenly I'm there, here I am, kind of, you know, on purpose, and I'm doing my thing, and literally it's like I've just kind of had that whole expansive journey. And so whilst a lot of people might imagine that, you know, something like a brain injury is the sort of thing you'd say you wish hadn't happened, to me, I mean, it was the most beautiful, magical, powerful thing that's ever happened to me. It was exactly what was needed to be able to fully nudge me onto the path I am now.
Mm-hmm. And you would never guess, like this, you know, the stigmas around brain injuries or whatever, like you said, life is ruined and you lost everything. I mean, I would have never guessed that was something that happened to you, because I mean, we could have a whole podcast episode about choice and all of that, right? But let's get into the timeline stuff. So, because, you know, I feel like there's like two things here. I feel like there's a lot of chatter in the spiritual world about timeline jumping and quantum leaping and collapsing timelines. And sometimes those topics can also be, I don't know the word I want to put to it, but I feel like there's sometimes a lot of fluff put with it. Mm-hmm. That really then has a lot of people questioning, what is this? Is it possible? Type of thing. And through experiencing your experiences through your stories on your timeline on Facebook, like, I know that it's real for you and that it's actually happened. So can you share from your perspective, what does timeline jumping, quantum jumping, timeline collapsing, I don't know, do you even use any of those labels? Like, what does that mean to you?
This is the thing, I probably don't use any of those labels, other than when I am called to share things naturally, as I'm sharing stuff. And, you know, as you know, and I've already said, Jeni, I share a lot of this stuff literally just on my personal Facebook profile. I'm sharing a lot of this magical stuff that's kind of happened to me and or is happening to me, like in the moment. And so when I I'm just kind of channeling what's come through, and I'm literally just kind of getting that expression out there. Sometimes words and phrases like things like, oh, I just collapsed linear time. Oh, I just timeline jumped. And I have to say, when I remember first writing a post about something that had happened to me, and those words and phrases came out, and I was like, I don't even know what that means. I don't even know, like, from my conscious mind, I'm like, I don't even, that's not something, it's certainly not something I've ever learnt about or read about or been taught about or anything like that. It just was this natural thing to say that that's what happened, because that was the best way to describe what I'd experienced. And so actually, I suppose in terms of talking about things like timeline jumping, collapsing timelines and all of that, sometimes the labels on it and trying to understand what it is from the mind really isn't serving us, because trying to understand something from the mind often is actually the least useful place to try and feel into it from, right? The mind is going to want to absolutely understand it, be able to label it, put it in a box, put it on a shelf, tie it up in a neat little bow, to be able to feel fully familiar with it before it will start to accept it. And so actually it's about coming to that space where we can just see if we can be open to the energy of the thing more than the labels. And so I suppose with the energy of something, where we might refer to things like timeline jumping, quantum leaps, collapsing time, the energy of it is in the fundamental remembering that we are multi-dimensional beings. We are multi-dimensional beings, right? And so when we are in more of the human side of self, and often the human part and phase of life, where we're much more just being in the human and being the mind and being the body, and that's who we be. And some people live their whole lifetimes like that, perfect, exactly as it's meant to be for them. Their soul is learning the lessons it needs to learn from that. Love it. But when we are in that more third dimensional space and perspective, then space, literally third dimensional space is so relevant. Like, something being here and something being over there is completely relevant, because in the third dimensional perspective, everything has to separate itself out in order for us to be able to experience. And so then we can come to that place where we can look at the third dimension from another perspective. We can look at that space, and suddenly we notice that there is that space there and that space there, and we bring time in. We say, well, it must take me some time to get from here to there, because if everything's separate, and then in order to be there and then over there, it must take me some time. And so we bring time in. And so space and time are basically a third dimensional, fourth dimensional perspective, because that's all the dimensions are. They're not places or realms we go to, they're simply perspectives. If you imagine it like a sphere, and you're just turning the sphere around and looking at it from different viewpoints, that is the dimensions. They're all one, they're all happening at the same time. It literally is just turning that sphere around to see it from different viewpoints. No one is better or worse than the other, even though the human mind loves to think about the idea that those higher dimensions must be better. It's not about that. It's about actually being able to be within the perspective and of all of them, and be able to tune into the ones that are useful within each now moment. And so the idea of timeline jumping, collapsing time, quantum leaps, is simply about such a huge shift in perspective that we actually come out of looking at things simply through the third dimensional and fourth dimensional perspective of space and time. And suddenly, outside of that, linear time and space as we know it does not exist in the same way. So within, for example, talk about quantum field, the quantum theory, quantum mechanics and physics and all of that sort of stuff, that technically we can talk about maybe taking place in the fifth dimension. In that space, it's even been proven, tests have been done, that like an atom or whatever it is can be in one place and another place at the same time, because linear time does not exist there. So outside of this third dimensional, fourth dimensional space, suddenly we're like, we can play in the energy of space and time not actually controlling what we do and who we be. And so when we deeply tune into that, so basically through coming into, reactivating and reconnecting with this truest vibrational musical note of us, this full alignment, this life force energy, we're basically activating our perspective of consciousness to be able to shift into different dimensions, remembering ourselves as multidimensional beings. And when that happens, we then are able to utilize that wisdom to be able to do things that do not make sense in linear space and time. So, for example, things like, things that have happened to me where it just, I've thought something, I've wanted something, and it just literally instantly comes in, even though it technically in linear time that would not make sense. I think you saw my post the other day about the dress that I manifested, that literally, I manifested, I asked for, I ordered, one afternoon from an overseas company that said it was going to take 3 weeks to come. I've ordered stuff before from there, takes 3 weeks to come. It came the next morning. I mean, it's not even possible in linear time for that to happen. And, that's just one example of loads. But because I have remembered that I am not just a third dimensional, fourth dimensional being, I'm a multi-dimensional being, that I don't have to work within the constraints of linear time and space. It's just kind of, it sounds totally crazy. I absolutely do. There's always the part of my mind that's going, what are you talking about? This is madness. This is not true. This is that. Oh, it was just that this happened. It's just that. But actually that really is how it is. And then in terms of ones to do with space, one of the ones I haven't actually shared about as a full story on social media, I think I just alluded to it in something, was actually where it was to do with physical space and a physical thing in physical matter. I had been away actually in Switzerland, staying with some friends, and I was in a real energy of activation and alignment there, particularly with the people that I was staying with. And I bought a ring. And I was wearing this new ring on my little finger. And I went to wash my hands at one of my friends' houses. I was about to leave. And literally, I'm washing my hands over the sink. And I had my ring on my finger because I was trying not to get soap in it. I remember it being there. It was kind of a ring with lots of bits sticking out. And so, yeah. And suddenly I looked away to go to get the towel, and I felt my finger feel lighter. And I was like, oh, the ring's started to slip down, and it's going to slip like into the bowl of the sink, which was fine because the plug was in, it's fine. But I looked down and suddenly the ring's disappeared. It's totally disappeared. And so I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, what's going on here? I'm looking at like, what's going on here? My hands have been over this sink. It's this tiny little like downstairs, kind of toilet room. My hands have been over the sink the whole time. And this ring is nowhere to be found, nowhere to be seen. I've literally just know the ring was on my finger. I felt it. I'm looking around me, of course, because the mind goes, well, maybe it did fall off there or go here. No. The thing is these sorts of things have happened to me so much. I can trust what is going on. I can trust the fact that I basically through and being fully activated into alignment shifted into another timeline, if we imagine that because we are multidimensional beings and because fundamentally everything is happening at one point in singularity, everything is within the oneness happening at one point in singularity, there are multiple, if not infinite, timelines of us, of ways we could have gone here, there, and everywhere. And it's like through shifting into another timeline, that ring just didn't exist in the timeline that I went to. It just didn't exist for whatever reason. And the powerful thing is, actually, for me, is that even when I maybe have told a couple of people that, they're like, but why? Oh, don't you want to know like why or what happened there? No, I don't need to know. I'm all good with not needing to know it, not having from a mind perspective to understand it. I'm all good with simply choosing to allow myself to trust that was exactly what was meant and it was perfect and it's all good. And also choosing to trust that I don't actually care if anybody believes me or validates me on it or any of that. I don't need any of that. I'm not here to prove anything to anybody. These are my experiences, and through sharing them, they absolutely activate even more beautiful energy within me, and then also resonate with and activate energy within the people who are listening that are meant to be listening to that message.
Okay, so the ring thing. Question, because I feel like you shared a similar experience with a car but you chose to go back to the timeline with the car. So like, how did you choose, okay, you know what? I wasn't meant to have this ring. I'm in this new timeline. I mean, I don't know. It seemed like from your story, your car was a necessity so you could get back home. But like, how do you
That was
know?
a big part of it. So with the car one, yeah, basically that this car, I'd parked somewhere. I was actually going to a stone circle. So a stone circle in the UK. Yes, we've got Stonehenge, love it. And we've also got lots of others, and obviously lots of others all around the world. But the one that I'd been to, I was at, was Avebury Stone Circle in Wiltshire, not too far from Stonehenge. And the absolute magical activating energy of that and me being there was just, whoa, like so much. It really did. I could feel so many magical things happened there. I could feel myself tipping and skipping actually into lots of different timelines, dimensions, realities. I was tuning into so much stuff, so much non-physical stuff. It was really powerful. But where I'd parked my car to get out and then walk through the stones and to the circle and then back up, as I was walking back up and I was talking to a man I'd literally just met, who was just, even that in and of itself, the most dreamy story of meeting this perfect man and having this perfect conversation and, you know, all of this. I looked to the left to where I knew I'd left my car and could see very clearly there was nothing in my, you know, in the way of that. And my car was just not there. It was just not there. And I remember in that moment just choosing, and almost I felt like my soul self, my higher self, had actually taken a hold of my body and my head and turned it back to face the man that I was talking to, rather than keep it looking that way. It just went, no, it's okay, Joe, just look this way. It's okay, carry on the conversation. So I just allowed myself to carry on listening to what he was saying. And at the same time, I just allowed myself to kind of keep repeating, I suppose, it's okay. It's okay. No matter what happens, it's okay. It's perfect. No matter what happens, it's okay. It's perfect. And at the same time, I'm excited to drive to my next place. I'm excited to go to the next place I'm meant to be going to, right? Which I'm probably going to, you know, a car would be useful for that. And so I found myself just then carrying on this conversation with this man I was talking to. And then as I looked back, the car was back there. So with that, I called myself not necessarily back into the same timeline I'd been in actually, but into a timeline where my car still did exist. With the ring, it was like I instantly knew that ring wasn't actually meant for me. Even the moment I put that ring on my finger and bought it, I loved the look of it. It was more of a mind choice, but my body did not like that ring. Like it did that thing where you get a little bit of kind of green, you know, color on the skin. I kept catching it on things. And so my body didn't really like that ring. And so it wasn't meant for me, which is why I instantly knew I wasn't meant to skip back into any timeline where it existed.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting as you talk about this, I feel like you've talked about it in such a way that's a grounding and a teaching experience, because it's what you do, right? And I feel like you brought it into very clear terms. And based on my experience of hearing about timeline jumping and all of that stuff, and I feel like there's an energy of excitement of like, oh, I like the stories, right? Like, oh, the stress from overseas came the day after. Wow, that broke, 3D linear time. Or, oh, I opened my computer and the chapter on my book was written and I didn't write it, or, oh, like I went in my car and there was a lump of cash on the floor. Like all the different types of stories like that. And I think that's some of the excitement and allure where people are like, well, I want a timeline jump. How do I, like how do I get that lump of cash in my car? And how do I,
And do you know how you timeline jump? And people aren't going to like this, by not actually caring about whether you timeline jump or not.
I totally do. Like after you talked about it, I was like, that's totally,
That's the thing. As soon as we attach to something thinking, oh, that thing will make me feel a certain way that I don't already feel right now, or oh, that thing I don't have right now, it's over there and I need to get there. As soon as that happens, the energy of it just will not actually allow you to fully have that thing and be that thing, because the universe knows, your energy knows, your consciousness, your soul, your higher self, all of it knows that it is about this now moment. Because in that multidimensional space, in those higher dimensions, everything is one and there is no linear time, there is no kind of space in the same way. And so everything is happening at one point in singularity, this now moment. And so if you are not being in this now moment what you believe you want in that next moment over there, then it's just not going to be able to come to you. Energy expands from where it is. And so the only reason why I have experienced timeline jumps and, all these different magical manifestation things is actually because I don't really care about them. I'm having such a good time in the moment, just being me and being in my aligned energy and, choosing to feel and be the energy of alignment, of abundance, of love, of joy, of curiosity, of wisdom, of beauty, of whatever else it is, that these things just naturally happen. And that's why, as I said, I've never been taught about any of this stuff. I didn't purposely seek out timeline jumping. I am certainly not an expert on timeline jumping, as anyone who might be is listening to this will hear, because that's not what this is about for me. And actually, when I say just for me, this really just isn't what it's about. The most powerful way of getting anything and everything that we want is by focusing on where we already have it, are being it, and are doing it in the now. And even if the mind wants to say, yeah, but right now, Joe, that's only a 1 out of 10 that I'm having it being or doing it, the money I want. Or right now, it's only a 0.1 out of 10. Amazing. A 1, a 0.1. I love it. Right. Focus on the 1. Focus on the 0.1. Put all of your beautiful focus and attention into looking at the oneness of that 1. Oh, the oneness of that 1 is so delicious. Look at, I love it. I love this. I love this about it. I love how I have this. I love how I'm doing this. I love how I'm being this. That will expand to become the all. And when that expands to become the all, anything and everything that's meant for you within the allness of your vibration will just come in. The tangible stuff, it just comes in when you're in the vibration of it. And that is not me saying there is no physical action to be taken, because physical action is beautiful and is powerful. But the physical action is very different to the doing on the hamster wheel that the mind and even parts of body think that is needed in order to get somewhere, but actually we're just spinning in circles. The action that flows through when we are in a place of alignment, a place of really being within us, then that action is one action where it might have been 1,000 in the past, right? That is when we talk about things like quantum leaps. Quantum leaps, again, a lot of people are trying to experience a quantum leap, trying to manifest, trying to create a quantum leap. It doesn't work like that. A quantum leap is simply a leap in perspective. It is a leap in perspective that turns that sphere around to a different perspective, generally in a dimension where actually that perspective and that consciousness can just instantly give you what it is you want. That's a true quantum leap. It's actually not something necessarily to work on or towards. It just comes from activating that alignment within us.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like, too, there's a level of belief and trust, as well as detachment and allowing and surrender, which I know sometimes can have attachments based on religion, but we're just talking about like from a detached standpoint here, because, I even just think about the car example. I bet that many of us listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube have experienced moments like that, but just wrote it off as, oh, it's a figment. I looked at it wrong, or, and then therefore there's a level of disconnection then from that even being a possibility if you are trying to make this happen, right? Like, what if you've already done this a million times and you just haven't acknowledged it from that perspective?
That is exactly it. That is the exact key, right? Is that we have to focus on. No, we don't have to. We don't have to focus on. We get to choose to focus on what we have now and to really expand that vibration. And therefore, that does mean allowing ourselves to, or choosing to allow ourselves to notice and celebrate all of those little things that the mind wants to say, no, it didn't really happen. No, I'll just push it off. Like I said earlier, imagination is the language of the soul, right? No, I'm sure that was just a trick of the, the light, or I'm sure that was just my imagination, or that didn't really happen, or, oh, it happened, but oh, it's not a big deal. I'll just kind of, move on. That is saying something to the universe. That is saying, I don't believe you. I don't trust you. Right. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, because there's nothing wrong with anything. It's all good. It's all part of the journey. It's all part of the journey. And at the same time, when we are at that space where we really are being called to trust, to really trust and to choose to believe, then that is such a powerful energy to step into, to choose to trust and believe that this was that. I could rewrite every story that's ever happened, and they are all just stories, right? Through this human kind of mind and body place, everything is just a story. It's just some of the stories serve us and some of the stories don't serve us, but we have to put human words around it, and therefore they're stories. But I could choose to rewrite every one of the stories of what happened with the ring, with the car, with the dress, with a million other things, and I could choose to say how, oh, it must have just been that, or it wasn't that big a deal, or whatever. But I mean, you even see, Jeni, and that's what you were saying about the energy of me, I suppose, at the beginning, is when I choose to trust and believe those things, and I then share those things within the energy of choice of trust and believing, and within the energy of excitement and gratitude and absolute delight over it, then that resonates with so many people. And it resonates with so many people, and it therefore resonates with the truest energy of me, and expands that vibration. That is why I then receive more and more and more and more and more of those beautiful things, because I'm not just discounting them and pushing them away.
There's so much power in this. And, as we close up our chat, and, you will be invited back, we will talk about other things in the future. Do you feel like there's anything that's on your soul, in your heart, that you feel like you really want to share right now that maybe we didn't cover or we didn't touch on?
Anytime anyone asks me that question, literally, I've got like my higher self, soul self, just going, love, 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 love. Just say love. Just say love. Love. It's just love. It's all love. It's all love.
So
And that is absolutely, for me, the key to it all is love. And I suppose here's the one thing that then I get led into to just mention with love. Love it's that heart energy. It is the purest essence of everything. Love is consciousness, source, the divine. It is everything. It seriously is everything. And in this third dimensional plane, gravity literally is the thing that is calling us back home to within that love. Like even gravity itself is that love of like being able to create the density of us being able to actually physically experience that love. But fundamentally, love in its pure, like the true pure love, is not what a lot of people's minds start to think it is. A lot of people's minds get this idea that love is this energy, actually more of an energy of need, an energy of attachment, an energy of codependency. It's this happy, high vibe kind of like being in love, kind of in a relationship sense thing. Love in its purest form is actually totally neutral. Love and the heart energy center is the breath. It is oneness. It simply is. It's no stories. It is simply I am. I am. I am. It is the breath of love and of pureness. And so when I say, and when I'm called to just, close off what I'm saying with love, 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 it is about inviting people to that pure neutral breath that exists within their heart space, yes, as an access point, and then radiates through them, around them, everywhere, is everything. It is them. And it invites people to return to the breath of the I am. That's it. That's all that's need to be said, right? There's nothing that needs to finish that sentence. It is complete. I am.
That's beautiful. Where can people connect with you if their soul is feeling guided to you? Like, what would you suggest be if someone's like so activated from listening to this and they really want to, just maybe be in your energy or even have that conversation? Where should they go, or what steps should they take?
The absolute best place is actually to connect with me just on Facebook, literally on my personal Facebook profile, which is Jo Naughton. Because that is the place where I be and share all of it. And so whether you are somebody who is just meant to literally be in that vibration of reading what I'm sharing, even every now and again, or whether actually we have a soul contract at some point to work together, that actually is a beautiful way just to be fully invited into my world and who I be, and just to then feel what resonates and what doesn't resonate within that. So yeah, send me a friend request, send me a little message to say I friend requested you because I listened to you on Jeni's podcast, so that I know to add you and I don't just leave you hanging in the friend request list.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
or click the follow button, just so that we can kind of be in that energy together.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so grateful that you spent the time with us today. I know I'm going to be re-listening, even though I was here in the conversation. I'm going to be re-listening to this, putting this on my bookmark in my podcast world. I invite you guys to do the same. Share it, please. Please share this podcast with anybody you feel that would really benefit from this message. And if there's like a name or a face in your brain right now, that's who you should send it to. Definitely follow that nudge. Don't shoo it off and be like, well, that was just my brain because that's who I talked to this morning. No, send it. Go ahead and send it, because you never know what connections could come from reaching out and saying, hey, I thought of you. Listen to this, or, really thought you could benefit from this. So thank you so much for joining, Jo. And
Thanks, Jeni.
we will see you guys on the next episode. All right, bye.